Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to make provision for the United Kingdom to withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights and to make further provision in connection with the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from that convention. In many ways, this is unfinished business. On June 23rd, 2016, in the biggest democratic exercise in the history of these islands, the British people, despite being told by all the businesses and all the trade unions and much of the press and most of this House, managed, despite everything, children be quiet. managed.
Order. I will be responsible for maintaining order in this chamber. Nigel Farage.
Yes, Madam Deputy, I'm sure you will allow me the opportunity to continue to try and say something without such constant interventions, and I thank you for that. And we voted clearly by a massive margin for the British people to bring back the sovereignty. And by the way, what makes me laugh about this isn't just the sovereignty of this country, it's the sovereignty of this very chamber and the people within it, to bring power back to this very place, and that is what we voted for. And of course, one of the most important subsets, one of the biggest reasons for that vote to happen, was the deep alarm at the huge numbers of people coming into our country. The fact that effectively we had open borders, making us poorer in every way. Now, of course, our membership of the European Council, of the European Convention, and then its writing into British law in 1998 kind of enshrined this, and it's what I think Tony Blair wanted us to do. Now, I believe that Brexit cannot be complete all the while we're subject to a foreign court and frankly, a piece of legislation brought in by the Blair government upon which judges can choose their own political interpretation. We are not sovereign all the while we are part of the ECHR, the European Council and its associated court. It's as simple as that. And do you wonder, it's marvellous to see the intellectual levels of debate in this place, it really is. Do you wonder that out in the country there is growing frustration?
Order. Can I remind members that the honourable gentleman has a 10-minute rule bill in front of this House and should be listened to without interruption. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was talking about fear growing in the country, anger growing in the country. I sense there's also a bit of that growing in this chamber as well. I do not believe that it is right that we should, when it comes to controlling our borders, when it comes to who should be able legally to live, work and settle in this country, or indeed who should not be allowed to stay in our country, for this to be under the remit, firstly, of judges in Strasbourg, who, by the way, are jurists, most of them not even legally qualified, and secondly, under the political control of judges in this country who now can make their own interpretation of what we've understood for many, many years to be British common law. This bill intends to restore the power of this Parliament, the power of all of you as MPs, to actually be in control of the things that really matter most to all of your voters, whether they supported you or not. This bill intends to return British common law and to bring back some ideas, rather than state-given rights, of birthrights, of liberty and freedom. These are things that over centuries served our country far better than any other nation in the European continent. This is about liberty, it's about freedom, it's about democratic control. And just think of this. Whatever election result there is, even if 650 of us wanted to change rules on who can come across the channel and who can stay, we could be overruled by a convention we signed up to in 1998. We could literally, don't shake your heads, we could literally be overruled. Literally be overruled. So this is about sovereignty. This is about sovereignty of the country. It's about sovereignty of our parliament. It's about our voters being able to choose the future course and direction of our own country. And that is why this matters. And let's just remind ourselves, very briefly, of some of the worst examples of where the ECHR takes away our democratic rights. To begin, and it's really interesting, isn't it? It was the last Conservative government who decided to put in place the Rwanda legislation. In theory, very good. It would act as a deterrent. Unless you support the criminal gangs, yes, it was a very good idea. A very good idea.
Brilliant.
The trouble was it couldn't happen. And why couldn't it happen? Well, because if you think about the Rwanda deportation flight in 2022, at 10 p.m. at night, a single judge in Strasbourg, one without any legal qualification, decided on the basis of Article 3, the flight could not take off. And we go on, of course, to horrendous stories, particularly under Article 8, the right to a family life. Well, whose family? The families of British people, or the families of those who've come into Britain, in some cases illegally, and then been waved through? Some of it is disgusting beyond belief. A Pakistani child sex offender dodged deportation on the basis that his removal would harm the children that he'd had in this country. And this goes on and on and on. Brazilian murderers, rapists, many others who claim under Article 8 the right to a family life. Well, what about British families? What about their rights? What about their freedoms? What are your priorities here as members of this place? Now, of course, we'll be told that by leaving this completely outdated 75-year-old convention, and by the way, I fully understand why in the 1940s this was signed up to, because the other European countries did not have constitutions, did not have democracies that could pretend them against, that could prevent them going into extremism. But it's now completely outdated. We are not Russia. We are not Belarus. Indeed. Countries like New Zealand, Australia, Canada. Nobody in this room would say they're barbaric or backward countries. They defend freedoms. But I don't defend state-given human rights, because they can be taken away by the very state that has been given to them in the first place. I've never seen so many Liberal Democrats in all my life. I've seen mine.
Order! Continue.
I would ask the Liberal Democrats and others in this place, what is wrong with you? Do you not believe? Do you not believe?
We've got a list for you. You've only got 10 minutes, mate.
Do you not believe this country is good enough to make its own laws? Do you not believe that the country that since Magna Carta has developed the principle of common law, and with its faults perhaps been the best ever developed by civilization, do you not believe we're good enough to make these rules? Or we stick with outdated conventions preyed on by human rights lawyers in this country? I move this bill will restore democratic trust and faith in this once great nation. Thank you.
The question. The question is, the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. Ed Davey, up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The speech we've just heard totally misrepresents the European Convention. And the proposer's failure to mention the huge benefits and rights the European Convention has brought to millions of British people says it all. For those attracted by the argument we've just heard, let me give them one strong reason to think again. Russia, under Vladimir Putin, is the only country to have withdrawn from the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, maybe that's what attracts the honourable gentleman for Clacton to it. After all, he said that Putin is the world leader he most admires. Russia, a country where those who oppose the regime are mysteriously pushed off balconies, and where, if it isn't enough to murder a political opponent like Alexei Navalny, Putin has even jailed lawyers who dared represent him. Things not allowed under the European Convention. But as we've seen a leading political ally of the honourable member, Nathan Gill, imprisoned for taking Russian bribes, perhaps we shouldn't be surprised that the Reform Party is so keen to follow Russia. And besides Russia, Madam Deputy Speaker, where else are people's hard-fought-for rights under attack? Trump's America. Of course, the US isn't part of the European Convention, yet its citizens have benefited from something similar, the US Constitution, designed to check the power of tyrants and protect the individual from the state. And just like the honourable member's desire to remove people's rights here, his hero, Donald Trump, is doing the same in America, attacking the courts and the rule of law, even inciting a violent mob against the US Congress to overturn an election. But of course, the honourable member for Clacton has called President Trump an inspiration. So if you want to know the member for Clacton's intentions for British people's basic rights and freedoms, just look at Putin's Russia or Trump's America. Madam Deputy Speaker, that isn't patriotic. It is deeply un-British, and he should be ashamed. Unlike the honourable member for Clacton, I am proud of our country. I love our country. I am proud that Britain helped create the European Convention on Human Rights, championed by Winston Churchill himself. The Convention protects the very people who need it most, our elderly and most vulnerable, so they may live and grow old with dignity, our children, so that those facing horrific abuse have better protection. It also upholds our freedom of speech, so that the press and public can criticise those in power without fear. And it protects our peaceful right of protest. 70 years ago, Britain became the first country to ratify the Convention as a leading voice on the global stage for human rights and the rule of law. That is our history. That is who we are. That is Britain at our best. And yet the honourable member for Clacton wants us to forget our history, dump British values, undermine the rule of law and row back on people's hard-won rights. I say no. To help get over how wrong the honourable member and the Reform Party and the Conservatives are on this, let me give some examples. Madam Deputy Speaker, when people died because of poor care at Stafford Hospital, their families secured change because of these laws. When British troops died in Iraq because of poor equipment, the Supreme Court ruled that the government was accountable because of these laws. After 96 people were killed in the Hillsborough disaster, and the victims themselves were blamed, and their families finally got the truth because of these laws. And when the Metropolitan Police failed to properly investigate the horrific assaults of John Warboys, his victims were able to take the police to court because of these laws. Time and again, the European Convention and its British twin, the Human Rights Act, have brought justice for our people, protected them from gross misconduct and unfair treatment. These laws help individuals hold the powerful to account, to hold governments to account. These laws can get justice when the elite and powerful cover up and abuse their power. So it's clear, isn't it, Madam Deputy Speaker, the honourable gentleman isn't about standing up for the individual, for the ordinary person, for the people with no voice. Madam Deputy Speaker, the honourable gentleman is the friend of the elite and the powerful. Yes. And Madam Deputy Speaker, if we do not defend our human rights here at home, how can we possibly persuade other countries of the importance of human rights for their own people? If we do what reform wants, the biggest cheers will come from the Kremlin and from Beijing, from Tehran, from Pyongyang, and from dictators and authoritarian regimes the world over. That would be a betrayal of everything our country stands for. And his plan would damage our country's ability to shape our world. Leaving the convention would be another nail in the coffin of Britain's unique soft power, where we have so often in the past influenced world events for the better by being part of international agreements, by upholding international law, by leading. Now, of course, the honourable gentleman has made his career by damaging our country and our influence. Remember how he led the campaign for Brexit with his Conservative friends? And we know what a total mess that's turned out to be. He and his friends argued Brexit would cut immigration, but immigration has gone up. Just look at how badly he's betrayed the people he claims to speak for. Brexit made the small boats crisis possible. Before Brexit, we effectively had a returns agreement with every EU country, the Dublin system. A deterrent that worked. And now undocumented migrants are trying to reach the UK because they know they can't be returned. Because, thanks to the honourable member, his Brexit ripped up Britain's rights to return people with no right to be here. And people who should have claimed asylum elsewhere in Europe, they may shout, they caused it. Yeah. Now let's look at one of our closest allies, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Republic of Ireland, and look at a vital part of our country, Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement references the European Convention 7 times. The guarantee of basic rights and freedoms in the Convention was fundamental to securing the Good Friday Agreement, to ending the conflict, to stopping the bombs, to getting peace. And yet he stands here today, prepared to risk peace in our country. How utterly shameful. Madam Deputy Speaker, as we approach Remembrance Sunday, let us never forget the sacrifices made for our freedoms today. And let us never forget the lessons that greatest generation of British people learned and passed on to us. I think the veterans will notice what Mr. Barrett Our greatest generation, Madam Deputy Speaker, showed us that we needed these laws to protect people from state abuse, to stop authoritarian government and tyrants, and to defend people's rights. The post-war generation knew how costly far-right-wing populism had been for our country and our people. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, for our greatest generation, for British people today, and for our democracy, vote against this bill.
The question is that the honourable member had leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no.